So I was lucky enough to be flown up to Sydney yesterday and get hands-on with Star Wars Outlaws. A massive thank you to Ubisoft and specifically to Laura for the awesome opportunity. It was awesome to catch up with a lot of friends. Other Aussie Star Wars creators that you guys may know were also there, and we got to hang out and get our hands on the game for just a little bit, as well as get a lot of info from the developers. And so because of that, I've got quite a lot to talk about over the coming days and weeks. And today I wanted to just start by giving you guys my honest first impressions on the game from what I was able to play. Now, firstly, I do just have some quick housekeeping. I'll leave some timestamps down below if you guys just want to skip ahead to my actual thoughts on the game. But firstly, I'm going to be doing a Q&A later in the week, answering pretty much as many questions about the game as I can from you guys. So any questions that you guys have about Star Wars Outlaws, leave them down below and I'll do my best to try and get to them in that video. That'll probably go up about a week from now, just to give you guys heaps of time to leave some questions. Now, something else to note is that we weren't allowed to actually capture gameplay. So the gameplay that you guys are seeing in the background is not my gameplay, but it is pretty much the same section of the game that we got to play as well. This is apparently like right as you get to Toshara for the first time, so it's going to be pretty early on in the game. And so even though this isn't my actual gameplay, this is pretty much what we got to play as well. We got to play for about 90 minutes or so, so it wasn't actually too long. The rest of it was mostly presentations, and we did get some opportunities to talk to the developers, so keep your eyes peeled for that later in the week too. I do actually have an interview going up in just a few days now. Lastly, and it is a shame that I even have to say this, but I've seen so much discourse around this sort of topic ever since other creators got their hands on the game a month or two ago. For whatever reason with Star Wars Outlaws, there's a lot of discourse that people who have played the game earlier have all been paid out by Ubisoft and stuff like that. That is not how it works, guys. Not only did they not, you know, we didn't get paid to do this. Obviously, we got flown up there and stuff, so that's obviously awesome, but we aren't paid to play the game. And on top of that, they didn't even talk to us whatsoever about the content that we should make or anything like that. They didn't tell us what to say. They let us into the event. We got to play and talk to the devs. Then we went out for drinks after and we went home. So for all the inevitable comments about, oh, this is not the guy's actual opinion, he's just been paid out. For those reading those comments who aren't sure how that works, I just wanted to clarify, because yeah, that is just simply not how it works. Now, anyway, getting into my actual impressions, and overall, I have to say I was pretty impressed with what we got to play. Now, like I said, it was only about 90 minutes, so it's kind of hard to gauge. I'm not going to come out here and say, oh my god, it's game of the year after 90 minutes. Even if it felt at the time like it was going to be game of the year or something, I wouldn't be able to say that, because 90 minutes isn't that long of a play session. But from what I did play, it felt pretty solid. Now, the first thing that I noticed was the graphics of this game. Keep in mind, of course, we were playing on PC, and the one that I was on was a pretty beefy PC, so I don't know how it's going to look on the PS5 and the Xbox and stuff like that, but the map and everything, mostly just those environments, it looks genuinely really solid. This might be the best looking Star Wars game we've gotten. To be honest, it might still be Battlefront 2. That game somehow still just holds up so well, but this game is, yeah, right up there with Battlefront 2 as like some of the best graphics we've seen in Star Wars. I do still hold on to what I said earlier on the channel about some of the player models. I don't think are all that solid, but I think the overall graphics of the game are really good. And like I said, that was the first thing that sort of caught my eye. Flying around on the speeder at the very opening of this play session, I was genuinely blown away. I was looking around thinking, holy shit, this looks like it's actually in real life. So again, just keep in mind, I don't know how that's going to look on consoles. I'd imagine it will still look very good, but yeah, at least on PC, it looked absolutely phenomenal. Now, on top of that as well, it did play pretty well. There was no real, issues that I found. It wasn't laggy. There was no frame drops or anything like that. I will preface that though by saying that when I played Jedi Survivor last year, we played that a month early and it played super well on the PCs that they had set up. And then obviously when that game launched, it had a lot of issues. So just because it played well for me, that doesn't confirm that it's going to launch super smooth. There is still a chance there will be some sort of performance issues and stuff like that. So just take that with a grain of salt. But from what I played, it did play really smoothly. I think I only ran into one bug, and they did confirm that this was an earlier build of the game. So they pretty much straight up said before we started playing, like, expect to see a few bugs here and there. But even then, I didn't really see anything at all. So it does look like it's hopefully going to launch smoothly. Again, just take that with a grain of salt. But Massive Entertainment just last year released Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which also looked phenomenal, and that game was like really smooth at launch. It had no launch issues. It was running pretty much perfectly on every single platform. So hopefully that is much the same here, but again, we're gonna have to wait and see. Hopefully this isn't one of those games that previews well and then when it launches it, it's got a bunch of tech issues and stuff like that. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are new to the channel and you want to see any more Star Wars Outlaws content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Like I said, there is plenty more content coming out over the course of this week, going over all the stuff that I learned in my hands-on time with Star Wars Outlaws. Now, moving on to the more, I guess, gameplay side of things, the first thing I want to note here is that the gunplay felt really solid. I was a little bit skeptical how the gunplay was going to feel. I'll be honest, it doesn't look spectacular when it comes to watching gameplay. It doesn't necessarily look bad, but it doesn't look like, holy shit, that looks super fun when it comes to like shooting stormtroopers and stuff. It looked a little bit rough around the edges and all that kind of thing, but it actually played pretty solid. I guess a bit of context as to how it felt. I would say it didn't quite feel as good as Battlefront 2's gunplay. I think Battlefront 2 really nailed the gunplay, but I would probably put the Outlaws on the same level as Battlefront 2015 sort of gameplay and, you know, gunplay and stuff like that. It still felt very good, but I wouldn't say it was better than Battlefront 2. It was also very early on too, so I didn't get to try out all the different blaster modules and stuff like that. We were very early in the progression and hadn't really unlocked all that much stuff. The only real difference I got to, you know, try out other than the regular blaster was picking up some of the, you know, certain enemies that you kill, they'll drop their blaster and it's like a actual rifle. So I got to use those a few times. They felt really good too. And yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with the gunplay. I was definitely skeptical going into it, but it felt pretty solid to me personally. In terms of like a lot of the regular gameplay elements, so even just running around and just how the game felt in general, again, it felt really good. Flying around on the speeder and stuff, that all felt really solid to me. There was nothing that I was playing and felt, oh, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't, you know, the controls aren't good or anything like that. It all felt very solid, which is obviously a very big part of what makes a game successful. So I'm interested to see how it feels once we get deeper into the game and get to unlock a lot of different combat mechanics and all that kind of thing. Unfortunately, in the session that I played, I don't know if other people in the room got to get, you know, far enough ahead in the story or not, but I didn't get to the Trailblazer and fly that around in space or anything, so I can't really say how that felt. The only gameplay that I really experienced was actually, you know, on the ground as Kay, so not too sure how that feels just yet, so I'm just gonna have to wait and see in that regard. Now, one of the things that I was blown away by was essentially just how much there was to do. We were pretty much only in Miragana, which is pretty much the capital city of Tashara. That's kind of the only location that we got to really go to in this session, because by the time you get there and you do this, you know, first sort of mission, and then I spent a lot of time wandering around Miragana as well. That was really the only location. I got to explore a little bit around Toshara in terms of like out in the fields and stuff like that. I got to do a little bit of exploration, but most of my time was in Miragana, and my God, there is a lot of stuff to do in that location. Obviously, that's going to be a key pillar of the game, so it's not like every city and stuff is going to be as big as that, but there was just so many things to do. Literally, you're walking around in the sort of streets, and it felt like every other NPC had some sort of side quest. You could go and gamble, you could go play sabacc. There's little mini games everywhere, even just little things like walking into a cantina and you can just change the music through the jukebox. There's little mini games in there as well that you can kind of gamble on and do like these little memory games and stuff. It just felt very alive. It really actually felt like a lived-in planet. That's a big thing for me when it comes to open world games, is a lot of games out there, they make a really good map and stuff, but they don't feel alive. It feels like no one actually lives on that planet and stuff like that. But honestly, I was blown away. There was so many NPCs walking around. It all felt very authentic. There's a lot of just stormtroopers, you know, walking around patrolling. There's different syndicate members and stuff like that who are guarding different sections that you can't get to unless you've got a better reputation with them. And like I said, just a lot of people sitting there playing sabacc, and it just felt very authentic. So I was honestly kind of blown away by that. One negative that I have towards Ubisoft in the recent, you know, maybe the last 5 to 10 years is a lot of their open world games do at times feel, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying soulless, but they just feel a little bit empty at times. They feel a little bit checklisty. It doesn't feel like you're actually walking around in a real location. That is not the case at all in Outlaws, at least in Miragana. Again, I can't really account for all the other places that you can visit throughout the game, all the other planets, and even just different cities on the same planets. But at least for Miragana, like I said, I was blown away. There was just so much to do there. And I pretty much spent most of my time not even doing the main mission. I sort of did the first main mission, but I was just wandering around Miragana, trying to find little Easter eggs. I was finding like little vents that you could get nicks to open. You could climb up into the vent. You could get into like a hidden room, and there's like credits in there, and there's like little hidden items. You can find rumors around the place that give you, you know, a bit of a hint towards a potential quest, a potential side quest and stuff like that. There's a lot of little, I guess, side stories going on that I'm not too sure a lot of them even have to do with side content. A lot of it just looks like there's, you walk down to a certain area and there's stormtroopers like pushing NPCs around, sort of bullying them. It looks like there's, something's going on there. There's been some sort of confrontation. It just felt very alive and very lived in. And like I said, I was genuinely blown away by how, I guess, authentic it felt, especially considering this is a new planet. This isn't somewhere we've seen before, but to me, it did feel very Star Warsy and yeah, just very authentic. I do think people are going to be kind of blown away by the exploration side of things. The map felt absolutely enormous. Once I sort of finished that key mission in Miragana, right towards the end of my play session, I then just got on my speeder and just went out and just kind of explored a little bit. And I only probably got to explore for about 5 minutes before we had to wrap up. But I felt like I went on that speeder for literally like 3 to 4 minutes and just drove in one direction, didn't even get close to the edge of the map or anything. There were lots of little, things you could see. It wasn't just some empty planet. There was lots of little locations that you look at and go, oh, there's definitely something I can go do there. There's a character I can talk to. There's a hidden collectible and stuff like that. So I think the exploration side of this game is going to be amazing. And it actually didn't really feel super Ubisofty in that sense, which is something that I've had a lot of complaints about with a lot of Ubisoft games. This actually didn't really feel like a Ubisoft game in that sense. One final thing that I want to say too is that the reputation system seems like it's going to have a massive part to play in this game. It's sort of bigger than I thought. I thought it was just going to be kind of like gimmicky little thing where it didn't really affect the game all that much. It would obviously give you like little bonuses on one side or another, or obviously negatives. If you've got a really bad reputation, you can be wanted by a certain syndicate or whatever, but it actually does feel like it's going to really alter everyone's playthrough. I feel like my playthrough is going to be completely different to your playthrough, which I personally think is a really good thing because it means there's a lot of replayability. We're probably going to be able to do multiple different playthroughs of this game and it won't feel like you're just playing the same game over and over again. So that was something I was very excited to see. I didn't really get to dabble in the reputation system all that much just because there wasn't that many opportunities in the playtime I had to really, make good connections with different syndicates and stuff. It was just not enough playtime to be able to do that, but it definitely felt a little bit more, I guess, in depth than I initially expected. Overall, I've got to say, I'm pretty damn excited with what I saw. I'll safely say this game isn't going to be a 10 out of 10. I think a lot of people are kind of expecting that for some reason. I'm not too sure why this isn't a Red Dead Redemption 2 or GTA 5 in Star Wars, even though it obviously does draw a bit of inspiration from those games, but it simply just isn't going to be a 10 out of 10. And I'm not too sure why people ever expected it to be, but that doesn't mean the game is going to be bad. I've seen a lot of people, and I was actually talking to the Aussie Jedi that you guys may know. We're good mates and he was on the same flight as me. So at the airport, we were literally just talking about how these days it feels as though people judge things by extremes. You either rate something a 10 out of 10 or you rate it a 1 out of 10. And it feels like you can't really be in the middle, which I just massively disagree with. It feels as though if a game isn't 10 out of 10, then it's people rate it as a 1 out of 10, and that's just simply not true. The game can be a 9 out of 10, it can be an 8 out of 10, and that's still good. It's not as good as a 10 out of 10, obviously, but not everything has to be a 10 out of 10. Realistically, there's probably one game per year, if that is a 10 out of 10. I don't think so far this year there's been any genuine 10 out of 10 games. So it is pretty damn rare if something is going to be a 10 out of 10, and yet for some reason people expect every single game ever to be a 10 out of 10. So I would just say if that's what you're expecting, temper your expectations. It's not going to be 10 out of 10, but I do genuinely feel like this is going to be that sort of 8 out of 10 type of game. And if it's an 8 out of 10 and it is very true to Star Wars, that can be, closer to a 9 out of 10 for big Star Wars fans. Similar to, I've mentioned it in previous videos, but Hogwarts Legacy, that game wasn't a 10 out of 10 as an actual game itself, but because it was very true to the Harry Potter franchise, it kind of hits you in the feels in the right way. And even though the game itself is maybe an 8 out of 10, people enjoy it as a 10 out of 10, if that makes sense. So this game is going to be kind of more in that vein, I would say, where, yeah, I feel like it's going to be about that 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 type of range. And yet for big Star Wars fans, it's probably going to feel like more than that, because from what I played, it felt very, very Star Warsy. And like I said, we only played 90 minutes. Once I get more of the story and more little Easter eggs and all that kind of thing, I feel like it's going to be even better than what what I saw. So that is it for my initial impressions on the game. Obviously, it's hard to give proper thoughts on something when I've only played so far for 90 minutes, but rest assured I will do like a full-on review of the game once it actually launches, going fully in depth and, you know, really breaking it down. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And like I said, there is plenty more content on the way this week. I'm going to be doing that Q&A, so be sure to leave your questions down in the comment section. I'm also going to do a separate video each on what impressed me about the game and what concerned me as well. And there is essentially daily content from now until launch, and probably for the, you know, a month after launch as well. So plenty of Outlaws content on the way. Like I said, if you guys are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of that content. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.